Welcome back to part 2 of our series on the adult point journey. So, you got the yes, you have your point shoes, and you've survived the first few months. Now you're in that weird in between phase, still clutching the bar, but dreaming of center, wondering if what you're feeling is normal or if you should be further along by now. In this second episode of our series, I'm joined again by the amazing Julie of Broche Ballet, who's coached hundreds of adult dancers, myself included, through this exact stage of the point journey. If you've ever wondered what those early months are supposed to feel like, or felt frustrated by your lack of progress, you'll love what Julie has to share. We also dive into some super practical questions, like how to control our point shoes and how to determine when they're dead. Just a quick note before we begin. This conversation is not a substitute for an individual evaluation, so make sure you're approved by a qualified teacher and fitted by a professional before going on point. The information presented in this episode does not constitute medical advice. Please consult a licensed medical professional regarding any injuries or pain. If you've been feeling stuck in your point journey, this episode is packed with insights that will leave you feeling seen and equipped to move forward. Ready for part 2? Let's get into it. Hello, Julie. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi, Hannah. So good to be back.
Yes, I'm really excited. So, for those listening, this is episode 2 of our 3-part series on all things point. So, in episode 1, we talked a lot about determining readiness and getting on point. So, I was thinking we could just jump right in and start from the assumption that we have been approved and we are now in our shoes. So, I'd love to start by talking about those first few months. And I think sometimes when we're in a new season, we're almost looking for validation that we're on the right track. So from your perspective as a teacher, could you describe what this early phase actually looks and feels like for
Mm.
students?
This early phase is a whole new world. Like you said, you called it a new season. This is a whole new world. I think these first few months don't look or feel like ballet. They really look and feel like learning how to operate a pair of shoes. They really look like learning how to stand on stilts, like you went to the circus and you got a new apparatus that you're trying to learn how to use. They very much are learning all the ways to get up and down, learning all the different mechanisms of using your shoes, and then how to do everything that you would do on flat in your point shoes. So how to do a tendu, how to do a dégagé, how to do a piqué, how to walk, how to stand, like all of these things that, like, I'm not even being facetious, that are just so much harder when you're wearing point shoes. So those first few months, the big goal that I have for students is to have a positive experience with their point shoes, to be calm, to be able to breathe, to be able to be present in the space, and to kind of take the overall stimulation down as those first few months go. Because the beginning, there is just so much happening in your point shoes, the sensations in your feet, all the new information, the humbling feeling of being like, whoa, this is super hard. The potential pain, which I think we'll probably talk about throughout the course of this episode, that we don't necessarily want it to be painful, but you could experience all kinds of new sensations in your feet. So these first few months are really about getting comfortable in the environment of a point class and learning how to exist in point shoes.
Yeah.
Does that feel like how your first few months were in
Oh,
point?
totally. I was laughing when you were saying, I'm not being facetious because I was totally unprepared for how difficult it would be to stand. Stand still in one
Yeah,
place, in
on
first
flat.
position. Yeah,
Yeah.
flat, totally flat. But yeah, that is one of those things that I almost wish I had known because it can feel a little bit like, am I an idiot? Am I the problem that standing is so hard? But then when you talk to
Hmm.
other adult dancers or just dancers in general, they're like, oh yeah, no, it's really hard to stand on point shoes, but you may not know that going in. So if that is the
Yeah.
experience you're having, know that you're not alone.
You're not alone. It's funny. I'm on social media a lot. I think people who are listening probably are. We're all kind of part of this community on social, and it's interesting because I post a good amount of absolute beginner point content. And the way I teach absolute beginner is like the absolute beginning. I don't assume you know anything, and perhaps I over explain some things, but I always find that better than under explaining when it comes to something like point shoes. And I'll get comments from teachers that are like, if you have to explain this, the person wasn't ready for point. And I'm like, okay, but really, we should really explain this stuff. This, like, point shoes are a whole new world. Like, just because you are strong enough doesn't mean that you understand how to operate a pair of point shoes. It's a completely different landscape. Like, what, that mindset, I don't understand. Why should you know this? Just because you're strong doesn't mean you know how to use these
Yeah.
shoes.
And they're unlike anything else you've probably ever put on your feet. You know, I mean, when
Yeah.
I did salsa, it's like I got fitted for salsa heels, and wearing salsa heels feels very similar to wearing normal street shoe heels. Like they're different, but it's pretty
Yeah.
similar. Point shoes are completely different from anything that you've probably ever had on your feet before. And so it is interesting. I mean, not to go off on a total tangent, but feel like even people that would say something like that, it's kind of a reflection of this weird gatekeeping mentality around point that I think we touched on in the first episode, where it's like I kind of don't understand that mentality. And I do feel like it does a really big disservice to new people because it seems to me that there's more mystery than necessary
Mhm.
around what it feels like to start point. Like
Yes.
I didn't know, and there was things that I could have known. So that's why I'm so glad we're doing these episodes, because I would have known. I would have loved to have known that standing in point shoes was going to be really hard, but I
Right.
didn't. So
Yeah, and to suggest that it shouldn't be hard if you were ready, I think is incorrect. I mean, maybe
yeah,
for children, I don't know. Children going on point is a whole different thing. Like if you have never watched a child go on point before, here's how it goes. You give them a pair of point shoes and you tell them, don't do anything in these shoes until I tell you to do them in these shoes. And then they do piqué turns across the
yeah,
floor and they do pirouettes across the floor and they don't care. They do whatever they feel like. And then you have to, as a teacher, a lot of studios keep the point shoes at the studio and do not even let the children take the shoes home because they are just going to be wild in them. And every teacher training I've had about point has been for kids, and it all explains you must keep the point shoes at the school. And I'm like, okay, but these are adults. They will not go up until you tell them to go up and until you convince them they should go up. This is the opposite. So if a teacher is used to only teaching kids who just fly around, you may think that they don't need this instruction, but let me tell you they do, because I meet them 20 years later after they've quit point, and then they're saying, wow, I wish I'd known this stuff when I was a kid. I just went up there and made it work, and then whatever it was. And I'm like, yeah, I know they need this information, but for whatever reason. So, anyway, the beginning is like really laying the foundations. And I really truly believe that it is a whole new land and you need a map. And the beginning phase is just like literally when you get onto a cruise and give you the map and they circle this and they circle that and they circle this. And you're like, I don't know, this is too much information. And then as you go, you start to learn how to read the map.
yeah.
That's really what those first few months are about.
Yeah, I think that's such a good analogy. And on that topic, one of the things that took me a lot of time to understand is just the difference between knowing a step, like the mechanics of how to do something, versus actually feeling in control of the shoes. So can you talk about what needs to be happening inside of our point shoes and how to think about the mechanics of going up and coming down? Because I think you said this earlier and I agree, like, I think that it's probably one of the hardest parts of point in general is going up and down. Like, once you're up,
It's not
it's
hard.
it's a little bit easier, but that
Yeah.
coming up and down is really difficult, and obviously that's gonna be one of the very first things that we're learning. So can you talk about what
Yeah.
actually needs to be happening inside the shoe?
Yeah, definitely. It's such a difficult part. Getting up and down is the hard part. Like if I'm teaching a class and I can tell that I'm losing the students, that they're getting frustrated, I'll just do a combo that's all up on point with beautiful port bras and they're happy again. It's the way up and down that frustrates people and it is very difficult. So what I always like to say is that your toes are the puppeteer of your shoes. So your shoes cost a lot of money, but they don't do anything for you. They are very expensive, but like they don't operate themselves. They are inanimate objects, but your feet are alive inside of the shoes, causing the shoes to move. So as you're going up on point, your shank is designed to be curved such that it's touching your foot. Maybe in the beginning it's not all the way broken and it doesn't touch all the way, but just picture with me that direction of the shank that it's towards your arch.
Mhm.
The the power in point shoes is when you push the shank in the opposite direction so that you're trying to push it into the demi point direction where it's detached from your arch. And that position, the demi point position, is actually the marker of an advanced dancer. If you can control the demi point position, the easier position is where it's touching your arch. So just stepping up on point actually isn't nearly as hard as rolling up on point because you have to use that demi point position. So you want to really understand how to hold your ankle still and move your toes such that you can create demi point in your point shoes without your ankle doing anything. So that is a huge skill to learn in the beginning. Like I know we're articulating in our soft shoes. I get it. We're all doing tendus, articulating our feet. By the time you get to point, you should be articulating your tendus well. But then you're wearing point shoes. It doesn't just happen the same way as in your soft shoes. You have to push against the shoe in the negative direction. So not just in the positive direction of pushing to point, you have to push against the shoe in the negative direction to get the shoe to bend backwards to come down from point. And I think that's a very big misunderstanding. People will say like resist the floor or come down slow. And you're like, I don't know how though, like I'm falling
Yeah.
to the earth. But it's really coming from almost like thinking about prying yourself with your toenails off of the box to come down
Yeah.
slowly, not just using your hips or you're dropping your heel down, but you're thinking about staying up, pointing your foot, and then using your toes to come back down. So the toe action is so, so, so important in your point shoes for getting up and down.
Yeah, and I love that you said that because I think it is really important to call out that it's not like a one-to-one, translation, like apples to apples, oranges to oranges of like you can do this in slippers and what you're doing in point. Like it is a very different it's just a different feeling,
A different
on
feeling.
dummy point. And so I think that's kind of going back to what we are talking about earlier. I think it's so important to say things like that so that people don't think that there's something deficient in them. It's like, no, it is really different. Just being able to do demi point in your slippers is not the same. So
Not the same.
let's talk about our home practice floors for a second, because a lot of us are out here dancing on laminate over concrete, tile, rubber gym mats, and yes, I know some of us have even attempted pirouettes on carpet. And our adult bodies are paying for it. But there is a better way. This episode is sponsored by Omara Sprung Floors, a family-owned business that's been building sprung floors for dancers for over 30 years. And their ballet practice floor is at the top of my wish list. It has a Marley non-slip surface over a professionally engineered sprung floor. In other words, a magic combination that lets you train hard and feel great doing it. Their floors provide 70% shock absorption, cushioning every landing, reducing fatigue, and taking the stress off your ankles, knees, hips, and back so you can keep doing what you love from the comfort of home. Omara sprung floors are easy to install yourself and built by people who truly understand what dancers need. Head to sprungfloors.com and use code AFTERCLASS10 for 10% off your ballet practice floor. All the details are in the show notes. Your dream home studio is just a click away. One of the biggest hurdles that I personally experienced in my point journey, and as my teacher, you had a front row seat for this, is just letting go of the bar and making that transition. And I think there's this no man's land in between where you feel pretty comfortable at the bar, but center still feels like a massive leap. So how do we as students navigate that gap, and what does it really take to go from death grip on the bar to dancing in the center?
This is a huge stepping stone, and it can feel almost like there's a cavern in between, like a black hole in between. That's not like a stair step, because it's not exactly like a linear progression where you just get better and better at the bar and slowly you let go of the bar, then you're off to the
Yeah.
races. It's not quite like that. It's a little bit more like a pirouette where it's not really step by step. It's like you grind, you grind, you grind, you get your balance, your proprioception, and then one day pirouettes start clicking after a lot of practice. It's more like that. It's not like, oh, I'm a little better than yesterday. I'm a little better than yesterday. I'm a little better than yesterday. It's like I suck, I suck, I suck. Oh, I can do a pirouette. It's more like it's more like that, which is really annoying when you're in the middle of it. As much as, like, I just have to say, as much as you dreamed of going on point, some of this middle stuff can be kind of maddening. And you just have to regularly remind yourself, like, I love my point shoes. I worked hard for this. I am grateful to be here. Like, you do have to kind of, do you have to do that, Hannah? Like, you have to
Yes.
kind of remind yourself you're doing this for a choice, like
Yeah.
voluntarily.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you're like, this is gonna be great. You're gonna have moments. I think the longer you do it, the good part about sticking with it is that you can look in the rearview mirror and know that there's gonna be peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
Because I think at the beginning, it just kind of feels a little bit like a valley, and you're like, will
Yeah.
this ever get better or be fun? And the longer you stick with it, you realize like the wins, the moment where you're like, oh, wow, that looked so much better. That felt really good. It gives you enough to hang on to keep going.
Yes, this middle stage can be so tough. So you're at this point where you're getting comfortable with the bar and you're probably getting bored with the same combinations over and over again, four échappés, two passés, one pas de bourrée. Like you're probably kind of over it and you're ready to move on. You're ready to start actually dancing, right? This is the phase where we lose a lot of people in Pointe, where they'll think like maybe I'm not cut out for it, or maybe I won't be able to do this, or maybe this is going to be too hard. I'll never be able to dance in them. These kind of thoughts start to creep up around here, like this will be different time for everyone, but for a lot of people, it's 6 months, around 6 months, around a year, like this early stage when you kind of know how to get up and down, but like you're not feeling any progress. So there's a couple of things to check first. Number one is your shoes. Shoes is a whole topic. I know we're going to talk about shoes a little in a little bit, but if you're not in shoes that are working for you, you're just not going to be able to leave the bar.
Yeah.
Like no matter how hard you try, if you're not able to like get up on your shoes, if you're too far over your shoes, if your shoes are holding you back, you're just not going to be able to leave the bar. And there's nothing wrong with you necessarily. It's just like you're in a shoe that's not working for you. And no matter how hard you fight, like you really can't, it's really hard to win a fight against bad shoes.
Yeah.
Or shoes that aren't doing you a service. So definitely check that. And then number two, check on what your thoughts are. Because if your thoughts are like, you're going to snap your ankle, you're going to break your toes, you're going to get hurt, this is dangerous, you're never going to leave the bar because you're just going to be so afraid that your shoulders are going to go up. They're not going to help you at all. You're going to lean forward. You won't be able to do it because your body language will say you're afraid. And as I always say, pointe shoes can smell your fear.
It's so
They're like dogs. They can smell when you're afraid and they do not work when you're afraid. They just don't. Like you won't put in the correct amount of effort to get up and you'll miss your point. You'll miss the point because you're just too scared and you won't actually give it your all. You have to go for it. Obviously, if you're not strong enough yet, you don't want to go for it and hurt yourself. So it's a bit of a fine line there. But once you are like in this stage where you're feeling stronger and you're ready to go, you have to check your thoughts. You have to check on if you're just telling yourself a story over and over again about how you're going to hurt yourself.
Oh yeah.
So
True.
I think a lot of us as adults tell ourselves that story. I don't think kids tell themselves that story that much. I think that's why they have to keep the shoes at the studio because they're like, wee, this is fun. Once you've kind of checked on those two things, your shoes and your fears, those are not easy to solve. I'm not saying those are easy to solve. I'm just saying that those are two big problems holding you back from letting go of the bar. Then here's what I recommend. I recommend slowly getting used to not having your bar. Number one, by doing things with one hand on the bar. So using less support, it's a lot different to just push down on with one arm versus leaning over the bar. You really get to see your balance and what's working and what's not working. Number two, I recommend doing center bar on flat, completely on flat. Can you do a bar on flat in your pointe shoes? Because a lot of times the beginning of center is just standing on flat. You have to plie in fifth to go up into sous-sus. You have to fondue on one leg to do a piqué sous-sus. And a lot of times we just wobble in that fondue. And so you feel already unsafe and unstable just in the preparation. And then you're not going to be confident or even strong enough to be able to push because you're off balance. So center bar on flat is part of my venturing off the bar program, is just like, can you exist without your bar and like not have a panic attack there, right? Like this is the part of it, is just existing there. Don't even worry about going up on pointe. Wear a dead pair of shoes and just do bar off the bar in your pointe shoes. Then do center with your bar next to you. So I like to just have the bar at the peripheral of your room. Like this is something obviously at home that's easier to do. If you're in a studio, this stuff is a little harder to do.
Yeah.
But if you're at home practicing, which I think for adults is really where you actually learn this, is how to be comfortable getting off the bar when you're in your own environment. You can make mistakes, you can take a breath, you can calm yourself down. Do center, but have your bar there. So if you're not feeling it, you can just grab on and do the thing and then do most of it without the bar. Then you can start to notice, oh, I always need it on my pas de bourrée on the left foot. Okay, I need to work on that area. Or like, oh, I always need it once we get to this. And you kind of know. And then the last thing, which the internet hates when I say this, but I gotta say it anyways, you have to play in your pointe shoes. You have to play. You have to experiment. You have to, like, by this point, by this level, you know what the correct way of doing something is. You know how to do a sous-sus correctly. You know how to do a pas de bourrée correctly. Do it wrong. Just get up there. Just get up there and see that you can exist up there without your bar. Just step up there. Just climb up there. Bend your knees. Laugh, clap while you're up there. Eat chocolate while you're up there. Do whatever you need to like enjoy yourself without your bar up on your pointe shoes. And then once you're calm in that scenario and you can be relaxed and you can breathe and you can sing along with your favorite song and you can have a conversation with somebody and not just black out, then you can start adding your technique back into the center with your pointe shoes. So that's what I would say the 4 steps are to just existing without your bar in your pointe shoes.
Yeah, it's funny to me that The internet hates when you say that because I'm like, yeah, I think that that's completely because it's made sense with how I have it totally aligns with what I've needed and what has helped me. And so, because I think so much something that I tell people is like just spending time in your shoes
Yeah.
is so invaluable, like, without the pressure of necessarily needing to achieve something.
Mhm.
Because I think that's really it's almost like a dating relationship, right? Like, you just need to
Yeah.
be able to, like, hang out and not have it
Yeah.
be pressure-packed, and I think that
Right.
it's the same with Point. It's like you need to have sessions or times where it's not pressure-packed, it's just you're in them, and you're allowing yourself to, like, be tuned in and feel what your feet are doing and
Yep.
change where your weight is and shift around and see how that changes things. Because like, without that, I think that it's just always gonna make the technical part more stressful,
Yes.
and, like, just that time is it's like the time where my point shoes started to feel less like something like tacked on my body and more like an extension of my feet is just in that
Yeah.
time where you can play and like you said be a little bit more relaxed. Like I can't imagine personally only doing point in a studio. I think the time at home in a comfortable environment to just play
Mhm.
has been such a
Mhm.
huge part of the learning process. Because yeah, I think especially for adults, it's like the regulating your nervous system is a huge part of this whole
Yeah.
thing.
It's
And so
huge.
it's
Yeah.
huge. It's
It's
way
huge.
more than I thought it was gonna be. I think I was
Mhm.
very well, not very, but I think I was more prepared for the physical challenge and less prepared for the mental, emotional challenge of point, and so
Yeah.
that there's a huge benefit to being in a comfortable environment and having sessions that are just approached from a playful mindset versus a, like, "I have to learn how to do this thing right now," because I think
Yeah.
that's where you start to this at least for me, it's like stress starts to creep up. That's when you get that, like, fear tension that sabotages you. So, yeah, I completely
Yeah.
agree, and it's funny to me that people hate that. I'm like, "Why?"
Yeah, I'll get comments like, "I'm old school. You shouldn't need to have to play in your point shoes to learn." And I'm like, "Okay, but do you know what the kids are doing with their point shoes when you're not looking?" Like, I get it that you think that your point class is the only place that these people are learning this, but, like, they're literally playing. Like, children are
Yeah.
the traditional way of teaching, I know, is that it's so detailed and so strict and everything, but I guarantee you that these children who got anywhere in their ballet career were playing in their point shoes between classes.
It's like a necessary part of the process. I think too, one of the challenges of this phase when you're a beginner is that it can be really hard to know what is a strength issue versus
Mhm.
what is a point shoe issue, like you touched
Yeah.
on earlier. So going back to that topic of the shoes themselves, how do you help a student diagnose like this is a strength problem versus a shoe problem and figure out if they are in the right shoes or not?
Mhm. Yeah, is it you or is it the shoe? This is such a tricky problem, but I think a big part of it is to try to diagnose some of these things in bare feet. So if you're looking at what you can't do in point shoes, so you're like, okay, I can't balance up on point in Susu. I just can't stay there. It's like, okay, well, how long can you stay without your point shoes on? Like, can you put them on a pillow on a wobbly surface and they can still balance in Susu? Like, how can you progressively try to bridge that debugging gap between soft shoes and point shoes and see like where the problem was in there. The other thing that's helpful is to check on the range of motion of the ankle and the toes and see how much of it is or isn't being used in the point shoes. So a big thing with adults is not being able to get all the way up on the box. This is one of the biggest challenges that adults will have within their point shoes is not getting all the way up on the box. Every once in a while, I don't know, maybe 10% of the people are too far over the box, like me, hypermobile, falling too far over the box. That's its own kind of separate situation, for which I've personally loved the 3D printed actable point shoes. So helpful for the banana feet people out there. Those and just like a super high, hard wing can be amazing to help you not go too far over the box. But if you're not getting all the way up on your box, taking a look barefoot and seeing the range of motion of three things: the ankle, the middle of your foot, and your toes. So if your ankle is not that flexible, but you have very strong toes and your toes can point very far, you need a point shoe that's going to bend in a different place than if you have more flexibility in your ankles and less in your toes. So you want to really try to think about where you coax that shank to bend based on which part of your foot is having more range of motion and more flexibility. So taking a look at if you kind of take a look at their seated point, like if someone is sitting with their feet straight on front, take a look at it, take a screenshot, and then in parallel on point, take a screenshot, rotate the one of you sitting up onto like so that you're kind of like stacking your feet next to each other and look at them and see like, okay, is the ankle in the same shape? Because a lot of times the ankle is actually less pointed in the point shoes than what you're seeing in the seated point. And so then you know that either A, the toes are not strong enough to push you up all the way over the box,
Okay.
or B, the point shoe is not bending in the right place, or it's not the right shoe that's pulling you back from your box.
Yeah.
Right. So as you go there, you can start to troubleshoot by starting to bend your shank a little bit to
Yeah.
see if you can get further over the box. And if you can, then it's possibly a shoe issue.
Yeah.
Then you can also start to experiment with a technique like having them move their toes inside of the shoes and see if that affects where they are up on the box. Like you're literally standing and you wiggle your toes and you see what happens to where your ankle is. So you can kind of start to troubleshoot that way. And then this advice is just the worst because it's so expensive, but you have to try different shoes.
Yeah.
I hate this advice because like I know that ballet is already expensive and you already buy too many leotards and you already have kids and pets and inflation and everything. Like I get it that everything is expensive, but like you know what else is expensive is like wasting your time in point class in shoes that don't work for you
Yeah.
and wasting your mental energy fighting shoes that don't work for you. Like that's also really expensive. Like what is your time and happiness worth to you? You have to experiment in this phase around 1 year, 6 months to 1 year is when you can really start to try a bunch of different shoes and start to see what's going to work for you. I think it took me 7 years to find a shoe that I was satisfied with. And
Wow.
even then, I have gone back and gotten a new style of shoes twice since then, or maybe 3 times since
Yeah.
then. So that's a long time. And that's like a lot of shoes
Mhm.
that sucked, right? And sometimes you get home from the fitter and you're like, oh, they felt so good in my fitting and now they feel terrible. And then you're just like so discouraged and you don't know if you
Yeah.
should go back. Even though they spent 2 hours with you, you feel bad returning them, but you still don't, they still don't work for you.
Wow.
So you do have to do a lot of experimenting, both with your feet, your toes, your technique. Try some stretches, try some more TheraBands, try warming up your feet differently, and you have to try a lot of point shoes. I'm sorry, I'm whispering it because I don't want you to
Yeah.
have to do that, but I do need you to do that.
Yeah, and I guess I would be curious to know if you have seen any things pop up continually of, like, red flags, so to speak, that were, like, a trigger for, "Okay, you really need to go in." I know you mentioned, like, not being able to get over the box probably being the
Yep.
biggest one, but are there other areas of, like, pain or discomfort
Mhm.
that you see students having where you're like, "Okay, don't keep just, trying to tough it out through this. This is something that you probably need to go in and make an appointment to try different shoes."
Yeah, so a big red flag is that the shank is not bending at all.
Yeah.
Like a totally straight shank. This thing should have some bend to it. And we can try to bend it ourselves a little bit and try to coax it into it, but sometimes a shank is just too hard. This can happen if you go to a fitter who's used to fitting children and has not fit adults either in a long time or ever. And sometimes without understanding of how different adult feet are than a child's foot, sometimes they just put you in the hardest shoe that they can come up with. And it's just too hard. If that shank is not touching your arch, it's not doing you any favors. You're just all on the box. That box is going to die. It's going to be really uncomfortable. You're either going to be in pain or you won't be able to get up on point. So check that shank is touching your arch. Once your shoes are starting to feel comfortable or feel more comfortable, that shank should really be touching your arch. Another big one is the situations with the box. So if the foot is twisting really bad in the box,
Yeah.
maybe there's a bunion a bunion or a tailor's bunion, which is on the pinky toe side, that's causing you to sit one way or the other. Then you need a different size box. The box needs to come up higher around those bunions, or it needs to be a different shape, V or a U shape, whatever needs to change there. You need different padding possibly that comes up over your bunions, so you're not just like cutting the padding right there. So twisting out of the box is a big one. And then the other one that I would say is like you really need new shoes is just if you have a lot of pain on the tips of your toes.
Yeah.
This one is so tricky because beginners will often think like that it's okay to have pain. And like it is okay to have some pain. Like they're not your bedroom slippers, they are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I think point shoes should be more comfortable than your least favorite pair of heels, at least.
Totally. I think that's such a great way to think about it. That's the best way to think about it I've ever heard, actually, because I'm like, how do you describe the fact that like it is uncomfortable, but you shouldn't be like wanting to chop off your own feet because they hurt so bad?
That's right. That's right. Like you go to a wedding and you're just like you regret. You seriously regret. You don't even want to dance because your feet are in so much pain. Like that's too much, right? That's too much. But it should be tight enough to hold you up. If you have compressible feet, which is where if you basically squish your feet sideways that they'll fold in half,
Mm-hmm.
then your shoes will probably get more painful as class continues. Because if you have compressible feet, your feet get smaller over the course of the class as they get warmer and they'll slip further down into the shoe. Versus if you don't have compressible feet, they usually get puffier throughout class. They swell a little through class, and your toes might go numb by the end of class because now your feet are bigger in the point shoes by the end of class. So if you have compressible feet, when you go to get fitted, make sure you have hot feet, like warm feet, when you get fitted for your point shoes so that your feet are actually the correct size when you go to get fitted, because that's a big one I'll see with dancers is that they don't know they have compressible feet, their fitter didn't check or didn't know to check, and then they're halfway through class and they're sinking down in their shoes. So if you had to drive, a lot of times you have to drive a couple of hours to get to a shop that'll fit you. Drive there early so that you have time for your feet to stop swelling. Because if your feet swelled in the car ride, now you not only have swollen feet, but in class, your compressible feet are going to be even smaller. So you're going to come home with a point shoe that needs like 8 socks in the box to, to hold you up. That we can't have. You're not going to be able to operate that shoe and be comfortable enough to get up on the box and stay there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. I went down 2 full widths from my first fitting to my next pair because, and I
Wow.
think it was for that reason because my feet are compressible, and I was like, oh, I'm actually sinking,
Yeah.
in these shoes, and like the shoe itself, just in my situation, the shoe was great. I just needed it to be more narrow because of that compressibility factor. So yeah, it definitely makes a difference for sure. Because I think that that's
Huge difference.
the biggest thing that I realized in point shoes was that feeling of being supported up along the sides of your feet. So, like you said, you're not getting all of that pressure on your toes because I do think
Yeah.
it is one of those. I don't know if it's just because of the pop culture ballet picture of like bloody toes and pain and bruised toenails and all this stuff that it's like you almost expect that that's just how it has to be. And so
Yeah.
you might push through more pain than you need to be pushing through.
It's interesting you mentioned the pain piece. I had one dancer come to me and she was in a lot of pain, but she didn't say anything about it. She was just in a lot of pain. And after a certain time, she wasn't progressing. And we got to talking about what was going on. And she's like, it really hurts. And she showed me her toes after class. And I was like, oh my God, you have so much redness. Like your bottom of your toe is basically square. Like you must have had so much pressure on there. And she was like, oh, I thought everyone felt that way. And they were just better at hiding it.
Yeah.
No, everyone else has comfortable shoes or like at least reasonable shoes, right? So she really thought that she was the only one struggling or like that just everyone else was also struggling as much as she was. And she just was the one who couldn't stone face it.
Yeah, yeah, because it is so hard. I think the hardest part about the first few months of Point is that you don't know what you don't know. So you have nothing to compare it to. You're just
Right.
like, this is my first and only experience. I don't know. Is it supposed to be this uncomfortable? Like, how would I know? I've never done this. And so it's to your point, like, until you try different shoes. I mean, even I think I've heard different opinions on this of people saying, like, oh, a really good fitter should be able to just like have you try on a couple pairs and you should be good. And I'm like, okay, maybe, but I also think like I tried on my fitter let me try on so many different pairs of shoes.
Yeah.
I mean, she was amazing. She didn't rush me at all. And I think the value of that for me, maybe she could have said, and honestly, the pair I went with was one of the first ones she suggested. But I think the value in your first fitting of trying on a million pairs is that you have that point of comparison with something
Hmm.
like being held up versus sinking, or
Right.
because you can't just try on one pair of shoes and think like, yeah, sure. I don't know.
This is it. Yeah.
This is the only thing I've tried on. So I don't know. I think for like a first fitting, and maybe this is just like a matter of personal opinion. I think trying on a bunch of shoes isn't necessarily like how good is your fitter. It's like you figuring out the difference of how different shoes can feel.
That first fitting is so tough because you don't know anything about what you're supposed
Yeah.
to feel. And your fitter's like trying to describe to you how it should feel, but you have no context for how it should feel. It's like try to describe high heels to someone and how they should feel. Like try to
Yeah.
describe high heels to like your husband or a man in your life, and then they're like, okay, you can't, it's hard to describe. So I think that's tough. I think this is also the phase where you learn about your anatomy. You learn about how different your feet are, because by adulthood, your body has your feet have lived separate lives from each other. We think that our feet have done the same things for us, but like even right now, I'm standing on my right foot, and my left foot is up
Yeah.
on my leg entry post because that's more comfortable. My right foot has lived a different life than my left foot. One of them has a slight bunion. One of them has a second toe longer than the other. One of them is a banana foot, and one of them is a straight foot. One of them has a hyperextended knee, and one of them doesn't. And each of these things is so different. And so as you're going, I've had dancers who even had such different feet that they were in different brands
Oh, wow.
on their feet, right? So point shoes are such that you can buy two pairs and use both, right? You just use
Yeah.
one pair on both, and so you buy two pairs at once. This is where you need to learn about your feet, everything that you didn't know about your feet, how they curve, how your toes are shaped, the hot spots that happen on the knuckles of your toes,
Mhm.
like everything that you feel in your point shoes is what you're learning. And I'll just leave with one last note on this is that after point class, take your shoes off and don't go on with your life. Look at your feet and say like, what happened in there? That's where after the aftermath, you can say, oh wow, that knuckle is really red. That Don't just ignore that and be like, oh, that's point shoes, or wear it as a badge of honor or whatever. Like, oh, that's red. That's where my feet are taking a lot of pressure. Oh, that's scraped. Okay, that's something that if you have a scrape or a blister, that means your foot is sliding in your point shoes,
Yeah.
right? And not just pressure, but sliding up and down, rubbing against the skin, right? Look at your shoes and then look at the bottom of your point shoe and see where it's dirty.
Yes.
Where are you actually standing? You can see that. Are you right in the back of the box? Are you on the top? Are you sickling? Is your shank twisting? You can see these things afterwards. So study your point shoes and study your feet after a long, hard point class, and you can actually see what took place in there.
Yeah. Such a good tip to analyze in that way, because it will give you so much feedback. It's super
Yeah.
helpful. So on this same topic of the shoes themselves, I think that knowing when your point shoes are dead is one of the mysteries of your
Yeah.
first pair, and probably even like your second, third pair. I think there's like this time period where you're like, what is dead? What does that mean? So can you talk about the common ways that shoes die, and how as students we can recognize when, okay, it's time to move on and get a new pair?
Yeah, shoes dying is an art form. People ask, when is my shoe dead? And I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't have a meter on it. It's not like it has a thermometer where it just counts down. It's totally an art form. And let me just say that a dead shoe today could be a live shoe tomorrow.
So
I
true.
have a wall full of painted point shoes over here on my side, on the side of me. And every once in a while, I'm like, oh, I wish I could wear my yellow shoes. And I'll take them down and I'm like, oh, these aren't that dead. I can totally wear these things. Or some days, if I'm really tired, then all of my shoes feel dead and none of them feel that useful. So, like, dead shoes today does not mean they're dead forever. It is a very weird phenomenon that happens with point shoes. They have 9 lives. I don't know. It's a weird situation. So, don't discount your dead shoes completely. Keep them in a little bin and try them on from time to time. But my main two things that I say is if suddenly it is more painful or you're able to do less than you were before, then it's probably dying. So either the function has decreased or the pain has increased.
Yeah.
This could be pain in class or the next day. So the next day, if you have sore arches or your Achilles are stiff or you have any pain in your bunion joints or anything like that, then you know the shoe is starting to die. If you just can't get up on the box, like, ah, why can't I get up on the box anymore? Like I just can't stay up, or I'm falling too far over if you've got banana feet. That feeling of like incompetence where there was competence
Yeah.
previously in the recent past. That feeling is when your shoes are dying. And then I always just say, like, get a new pair and try them on and alternate. Because if you're going to need a new pair anyways.
Hmm.
So at the point when you're not sure if they're dying, get a new pair, and then you can try them on and alternate classes with your new shoes and your dead shoes. So you can actually see the difference. Like, oh, wow, that's what support feels like. Oh, interesting. And
Yeah.
you can really start to compare and contrast. I think there's huge value in wearing dead shoes and not dead shoes back to back. So you can start to see the impact that the shoe makes on you and on your point technique.
Yeah, I think that's such a great tip, because sometimes, you can get your shoes and be wearing them for 3, 4 months and you don't remember what they felt like new
No,
anymore. And so
no.
it is funny because I remember that when I got my second pair and I put on a new pair again and I was like, "Oh, I forgot what this felt like to have all this
Yeah.
support," because
Right.
I hesitate to say I have banana feet because they're not super banana, but
You
they're
do have on
more,
the, you do have, yeah.
yeah, they're a little more towards that. And for me, it was
Yep.
like starting to see how archy my foot was getting on point. I was like, oh wow, it's really starting to have a steep curve there. I don't know if that's quite right, but yeah, it's great to have that contrast. I think that's like such a great practical tip because like you said, you're gonna buy the shoes anyway. So if you're even starting to question, like just buy them and do the comparison because yeah, you
Yeah.
do tend to forget depending how long it's been since you initially bought your first pair.
Yeah, definitely. And don't worry about knowing definitive if they're dead or not. It doesn't matter. If they're not working for you anymore, use the new pair
Yeah.
and then try them on again in a couple months when you're stronger and maybe you'll like them again later. So
Yeah.
don't worry about being like, oh, are they dead? Are they dead? Are they dead? It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
just move on and keep them
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, and they definitely do resurrect. I had that
Yeah.
happen with a pair recently where they were like my, every once in a while, it's one of the funny things about Point is you just get like I call them unicorn shoes where you get a pair that's just like
Yeah.
amazing and you love them and you're like, don't
Yes.
ever die. And then they start to die. And it
And
is
you're like
funny because,
sad
yeah, oh my gosh,
inside.
seriously, I'm like grieving my shoes. But then I set them aside and a few weeks ago I was like, I just want to put these on. Like these felt really good. And I put them on and I was like, I don't think they're dead anymore. I think I
Yeah.
can wear these for a few more classes. So it is
Yeah.
funny. It's like I don't know enough about how they're made to I'm guessing maybe it has to do with them having a chance to like really reharden because I know that
Dry.
with
Yeah.
sweat it kind of softens the glue. So maybe if you just wait long enough, sometimes it's enough time that passes for everything to harden back back
It
into
gets like
place. But
crispy. It gets
yeah.
like crusty from the sweat. It's like
Oh, it's
gross.
so gross. Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't planned to ask this, but do you have any thoughts, opinions on gluing your shoes and
Mm.
when that can come into play? Like, I'm someone who breaks my shoes, they tend to die in the arch, and so
Uh-huh.
that's where I have found just from trial and error that applying some glue right across like a little band can get me some more time in those shoes. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on glue.
Yeah, huge fan. Huge fan of the glue, especially if you know about yourself and your feet where your shoes die first. Just yeah, use some glue to preserve the spot that they always die first, and then see what dies next. And it gives you more information about what's the next weakest link in the shoe. If you're just always killing the tip of the box, then put some glue in the tip. If you're always killing the wings, the sides where your feet are, if those are always getting mushy, put some glue there. Once they're broken in, once they're in that sweet spot, put some glue there. I paint my point shoes, which acts like glue. When you paint the point shoes, it makes them a little bit smaller and a little bit harder, and it can help them last quite a bit longer. My painted shoes last maybe 4 or 5 times longer than my non-painted shoes. So it's definitely a money saving. Like it's $8 for the paint or whatever, but like you can get another, couple months. Also the product Point Shoe Shellac is kind of along these lines where it really just hardens the entire shoe. So yeah, once I paint a shoe, it's like, oh yay, here we go again.
I had
Second
no
wind.
idea that painting them made them last that much longer. Now I'm like, man, I
Yeah.
should start
The
painting some of
point
my old shoes.
Yeah, the Point People paint is great. It's so great. It's easy to apply and it helps your shoes last longer. And you have painted shoes. I mean, you do have to be careful if you are going into an in-person studio. Sometimes, depending on the color you use, it can leave marks on the marley. And no studio owner wants you to leave marks on their marley. So if you're going to take that advice, either do a skin tone or ask your studio if they're okay with it
Yeah.
before you take painted point shoes in there because they'll be like, oh my
Yeah.
God, please don't.
Yeah. Just
This
enjoy
is
them from
the
home.
yeah, enjoy them from home. Then it's your own floor. But yeah, just disclaimer there. Don't paint them and take them out and tell
Yeah.
them that I sent you.
Yeah. Like I don't want dance studio owners coming for me. So yeah.
Yeah, they're already coming for me. So we don't
So
need.
funny. Uh, so I know that you are, I think we touched on this in the first episode, just that you're an advocate for a dedicated point bar, not
Yes.
just wearing point shoes to regular class that you wear in
Yeah.
slippers and thinking that that's going to achieve the same thing. So what does a proper point specific bar accomplish that a standard ballet class in point shoes will not?
This is something that if you look at my content from 4 or 5 years ago, I had a different opinion about this. This has changed over time, and I'll tell you why, and I think it kind of helps with the answer to this question. So in point class, you're working on getting up and down. That's the releve that's facing your bar. You're doing releves, you're doing susu, you're doing échappé, you're doing releve passe, piqué susu, bourrée, all of the things about getting up and down. But nowhere in there are you taught how to just stand on flat, articulate your shoes, make your shoes look professional. Like, how do you get your shoes to actually look like you're doing ballet in them and that you're actually articulating and that they look like when you watch a professional dance, their point shoes look like soft shoes.
Mhm.
They are articulating through their feet, and you're like, "Are you wearing the same shoes I'm wearing? Because my shoes do not do that." It's like, what is happening here? And so, if you're in a class that is not worried about getting up on point, because, like I said, that definitely takes away your ability to think and focus. If you're in a class that's designed for point shoes, and especially that's designed on flat for point shoes, you can wear a dead pair, so you can actually see it articulating and see it moving. And B, you can learn what your toes should be doing in the shoes. So a tendu in your point shoes is different than a tendu in your slippers.
Yeah.
If you're going out to demi point and then to point, you have to actively flex your toes in your point shoes in order to create the look of demi point.
Mhm.
But in your soft shoes, you do not have to actively flex your toes. In fact, your toes should not be off the ground when you're
Mhm.
doing demi. They should be
Mhm.
pressing on the floor and you're going through the floor. But in your point shoes, you're like flexing your toes as you're bringing your shoe out, and then you flex your toes on the way back in. So you can tell women who do a lot of barre and point shoes in their soft shoes because they do their tendus with their toes off the floor. And you're like, oh,
So
yeah,
funny.
that's because you train in your point shoes at the bar all the time. It's just a different technique, right? But if
Yeah.
you're doing tendu, if you're doing class with people who are in their slippers and you're the only one in your point shoes, the teacher does not have the bandwidth to tell five corrections in the same combination. Like as a teacher, if you're balancing a group class, you already are picking and choosing what corrections you're able to give that are relevant to the group of people and are helpful to an individual, but not wasting the rest of the group's time or like still going to be useful for the rest of the group. So you're already being very careful with what you cue and what you correct. So tendu, coup d'appuyer, rond de jambe, retiré, fondu. How do you do all these things? What are your toes supposed to be doing inside of your point shoes? This is the main question that I think a bar dedicated a dedicated bar and point shoes can help. And the reason I had added it to my classes is because I was watching all of these students over the years in my point program. And then I tried to teach a point variation. And I was like, a lot of this point variation is on flat. And I realized that we did not take enough time to discuss what is happening in a simple pas de cheval, or what is happening in a simple walk, or what is happening in quote unquote simple movements. But they're like, their shoes aren't moving how I want them to be moving in this. But point class isn't the place for that. So having that extra time where you're all on flat, they can wear dead shoes, it's more relaxed, but you can talk about these details was immensely helpful, not only for getting people to be able to leave the bar because they feel better, but also getting people's feet to just look more beautiful when they're doing their work because you have the time to discuss without their toes hurting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to get comfortable doing those things in shoes, because like we talked about earlier, it's even taking out being up on your point shoes completely out of the equation, like
Yeah,
it does feel so different doing anything.
so different.
And so I think, yeah, it's funny because I had this realization a while back. I was watching something on YouTube, like a professional production, and I can't remember what ballet it was, what variation it was, but I was watching it and I had this realization of I think sometimes we think about variations that like I don't know why, at least this was me. It's like I think that they're up on point, like 95% of a variation. But then when you actually watch and you're looking for that or you're learning a variation, you realize like a good chunk of every single variation, you're not actually on point. Like
No.
you're walking, you're running from place to place, you're doing all this,
Yeah.
other stuff that's not on point. And so it is funny how I think that that completely makes sense to me of like having a gap of going from slippers to point classes where the focus really is literally being on point. But when you are
Yeah.
doing something like a variation and you want to start performing, there's this whole in between where you're in point shoes but you're not on point, and you
Right.
have to do all those things like tendus and pas and all the things that you
Or
just
walk on stage. You
yeah
have to like
walk
get
on
on stage
stage.
somehow. Yeah, I think like a pas de deux is the only time when you're really up on point the whole time. And even then you do have to still walk to your partner and like do other things. But yeah, so much of point is flat, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true, and it's
Yeah.
like we said at the very beginning, I think it's kind of the harder part a lot of
Yeah.
times, which is yeah, sometimes I'm like, "My god, I just wanna be up on a releve right now. I
Yeah, it
hate
would be so much
standing."
easier.
It's so
Exactly.
rough. So rough. Um,
Exactly.
so when it comes to getting over the box of our point shoes, can you
Yeah.
talk about the main factors that are at play there with ankles and hypermobility, all those things? Because I know that or I'm guessing that what every dancer would have to think about is going to be different depending on
Yeah.
where they fall, like with getting over the box too much, not getting up enough, all that stuff.
Yeah, getting over the box is such a tricky one because it's it helps with your balance when you're up on the box all the way. It makes your balance much easier when you're actually on the platform and your platform is stable on the ground and everything. So there's three parts of your foot and there's three factors to consider. So 3x3 matrix that we're talking about here. So if you made it on your paper, 3 columns on the top, 3 columns, 3 rows. So you've got the flexibility and strength of your ankle, your midfoot, and your toes. So you've got flexibility and strength for each. And then you've got the shoe for your, how the shoe fits your ankle, how the shoe fits your midfoot, and how the shoe fits your toes. So you've got all three of those factors, flexibility, strength, and the shoe fit on across all three of the areas, ankle, midfoot, and toes. So when it comes to the ankle, this is where people often obsess over the flexibility of the ankle. This does matter. Like, you do have to have a good range of motion of the ankle to be able to get all the way up on point and to enjoy yourself up there. But there is also the midfoot arch. So the movement of the midfoot arch, if that is super, super locked up, if we have a lot of tightness around the arch of the foot, this can really stop you from getting any range of motion out of the midfoot. And then also how far down your toes can point. So if you're thinking about pointing your feet, like sitting on the floor and pointing your feet straight out, what I mean by this is, do your toes only come out the foot or can they curve down?
Yeah.
So curve and curl are two words that are very similar, but are different. So we talk a lot about not wanting to curl or crunch your toes in ballet. Other sports do curl and crunch their toes on purpose for the aesthetics. Rhythmic gymnastics, regular gymnastics, bare feet things, synchronized swimming, they do curl and crunch their toes because the aesthetic is going to make it look very curved. In ballet, it's a little different. We don't want only the aesthetics, we want the function. So we want long flipper toes. I know we talked about this a bit the last episode of in the readiness section. But here, when it comes to getting over the box, you need the pads of your toes to be able to press on the bottom of the shoe to help get you over the box all the way if you're behind the box. Now, if your toes can't point that far down, we can work on this a couple of areas. Maybe we need more massage and stretch across the top of the foot. Maybe we need more flexibility in the shin. Maybe we need more strength on the bottom of the arch. Maybe we need more strength in the calf to be able to point the foot further. Maybe we need more strength in the soleus right underneath the calf. When we're thinking about this, you've got the two areas, but the flexibility is dealing with the top of your foot and the strength is dealing with the bottom of your foot. Yeah. So you've got those two bits. How flexible is the top and how strong is the bottom? If you have all the flexibility in the world, but you're not strong enough to hold it, that's not helpful because you are not able to actually use the range of motion that you have. So you want to attack it from twofold. You want to work on gently stretching the top of the foot and strengthening the bottom of the foot to be able to hold it there. So an exercise I like to do, which can help you see if you're able to hold your range of motion, is to flip so you're in point shoes. Let's say you're standing in first position, flip one foot up on the box and put pressure on the foot so that it's kind of pressing over the arch, almost like a stretch. And now pick your foot up. Can you keep that shape? Or did your foot relax? Did your point shoe relax? Mm-hmm. So pressing on the floor, you see the possibility of the shape of your ankle and the shape of your shoes. And then can you hold it without the pressure on the floor? That's a great way to check. Is this a flexibility problem or a strength problem? If nothing changes, then your strength currently matches your flexibility.
Yeah.
If something changes or a lot changes, then you know that you have more flexibility and you're not strong enough to hold it yet. So that's one kind of easy way to tell where you are on that spectrum. And then we've talked quite a bit about the shoes here, but don't discount the shoes. You could be strong enough and flexible enough, and that shank is just not doing any favors, or the vamp is too high on the shoe and pushing you back. That can happen. Alternatively, on the other side of the thing, if you have the banana feet and you are too far over the box, this is a bit annoying of a problem because, number one, nobody will believe you that it's a problem.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, but you have such pretty feet. I would kill for feet like that. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I get it. Like, I get it. I get that the aesthetics are nice, but I always joke that my feet are like catalog feet. They're not like functional feet. Like, like they're beautiful. And like, take pictures of them all day, but like try to use them and like good luck.
So funny. Yeah, you do. It's funny. I think one of the first times I DM'd you, it was like making some sort of creepy comment about how beautiful your feet were. I had that like memory came into my mind the other day where I was like, yeah. I think one of the first times I ever had contact with Julie, it was like me being creepy about how beautiful her feet were. Which
yeah, it's like, yeah, totally. Yeah, you guys get it. You guys get it out there. But when you do have the banana feet, be very careful in your fittings that your fitter doesn't just get excited about your banana feet and fit you in the most beautiful pair of point shoes. Because I think we've all had this happen where they're just like, oh my God, your feet are so beautiful. You're so beautiful. They're so beautiful. And they won't give you good feedback on if the shoe is a good fit or supportive just because they're so excited to see your feet. And you're like, that's not what I'm looking for. Like, I get it. You know, they are what they are, right?
But I need to dance
I
stop.
need to be able to use them without getting hurt. And like I said in the last episode, banana feet are so prone to injury when it comes to point work because those ligaments can be overstretched so easily. You can fall too far over the shoes. The whole thing is just less stable in general than a straighter foot.
Yeah.
So what I recommend for the banana feet people is when I write a letter to the fitter for all my new point dancers so that they have something to take to the fitter. So tell this to your fitter. If you don't have a letter from me, tell this to your fitter that you want a functional shoe, even if it's less aesthetic. So it's like, get out of your system, put me in the beautiful shoe, but then like we need to get to work here. And like
Yeah.
I call it a work shoe. I need a work shoe. I need a shoe that's gonna
So
hold me
true.
up and last through time. So
Yeah.
just going in with that intention, they'll give you a higher wing. What I mean by that is that the box, like on my point shoes, the box is hard up until the seam
Yeah.
of the point shoes. My box is hard. I can't even
Mm.
sew ribbons past the seam because there's
Oh
box there,
wow.
right?
Yeah.
So there's the box is hard for almost my entire foot, right? It's not like the most beautiful line. And if I'm in a very flexible shoe, it looks way better, but it actually keeps me upright in the point shoe. And that is so much more comforting because there's nothing, I mean, being off of your box in either direction is scary, but especially over. And then you really want to be strong. The strength thing for my banana people, is that you want to be able to flex your toes and flex your feet. You probably have a shallow plie and you probably don't have a very strong flex of your toes because that area is always so overstretched. So put a resistance band, like tie a resistance band to your bar, put your foot pointed in the resistance band and pull away, and then practice flexing your toes against the resistance band so you can practice strengthening the top of your foot to help control and pull you off the box when you need to come down. Otherwise, you're just going to get stuck over that box and it's really hard to come down.
Yeah.
And get off the box. Vamp elastic can help as well. That's like elastic that goes over the top of your arch. You just sew like a big piece of elastic. It's so ugly, so ugly. Oh my God, vamp elastic just like kills the look of your banana foot, you know. But like sometimes you just need to get the job done.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting because I didn't realize until you had mentioned something that it totally makes sense that because I do tend to be a little bit more on the banana foot end of the spectrum, like coming down for me has always been harder
Hard.
than going
Mhm.
up. And
Right.
can you talk about that a little bit? Because you mentioned like the differences of what you might struggle with if you have more of the archy feet versus more of a, you know, but I think Erica said on one of our past episodes, bananas or biscuits.
Yeah, bananas or biscuits. Yeah. Yeah. So if you have the banana foot, probably coming down is very hard for you. You can probably stay up until the cows come home. You probably have better balance in your point shoes than in your soft shoes. And you will get stuck on point. Like I remember I was in a point class once and I did a PK arabesque in the center of the room and I like literally I couldn't calm down. I like panicked and I was like freaking out and everyone was laughing at me, right? Like, but for me, it was like, they're like, oh, what was you? You have beautiful feet. And I'm like, but I'm stuck. You know, you don't
Yeah.
understand how scary this is to be stuck up here, right? Like, you don't
Yeah, because you
understand.
can't
You
shift
can't
back.
pull
It's
back.
it's really
Yeah.
weird. I didn't understand it until I started doing point. I was like,
Yeah. It's
why
so
can't I
strange.
get down? Like it's a weird
Yeah.
feeling when you're like up there and you're like, I know that I need to shift back, but I you have developed that sensitivity of like how to transfer and roll down, but it is a really
Right.
weird feeling. I'm like, how do you
So
explain
weird.
getting stuck on point? Like it sounds bizarre, but it
It
happens.
sounds bizarre. It totally happens. But I explain what I like to say to banana people is that in your point shoes, when you're all the way on point, you're shorter than when you're on your way down. Your toes are curved and your ankle is totally curved. So you actually need to get taller before you can come down. So you actually need to go up and over the edge of your shoe, think up with your foot, and then you'll come down the other side. So it's very much that motion. And that's what I was saying. You need to use a TheraBand to work the toes so that you can actually pull yourself up and over the shoe to get down on point. If you have biscuit feet, we'll use Erica's term. Thank you, Erica. Shout out to Rochester. If we'll use Erica's term, if you have biscuit feet, you probably have a harder time getting all the way up on your box, especially in échappé, especially when your feet are wider out to the side. You're going to have to use your toes so much more. Your knees are probably going to soften to try to help you get over your box, and it will work. Your soft knees helps you get over the box. The straighter knees pulls you back from your box. So you're always going to be playing sort of like a whack-a-mole situation of like straight knees, I get pulled off, bent knees, I can be on the box. And you kind of are always trying to manipulate how straight can my knees be while I'm on the box in a reasonable way, and continue to get stronger and stronger with your feet and your knees that you can pull up your knees and be over your box. That's a continual kind of push and pull struggle for the biscuit feet.
Yeah.
The great news for the biscuit feet is that your plie on point, your hops on point often come a lot easier for you than the bananas. And sometimes there's more shoe options available for the biscuit feet than for the banana feet. Not always, it depends on the shape of your foot and what's going on, but the biscuit feet can sometimes have more options that can fit them, more brands that can fit. But yeah, that's kind of what I see the difference in the feet.
So for someone listening who feels like they're in this, we talked earlier about like the 6 to 12 month period where you might be feeling like you're hitting this plateau in your point journey. Maybe you're struggling to get off the bar, maybe you're struggling to get over the box, or you're just feeling like you're not really progressing in general. What is the most important thing that you would want that person to hear and to take away from this conversation?
If you love points, don't give it up. This phase is just a phase, and the whole next episode is going to be all about how to get beyond this phase and make a plan for success in the future. And so if you love pointe, if you love your pointe shoes, if you want to dance freely in them, if you want them to be part of your expression, do not let this particular valley be the end of your road with pointe shoes. You deserve to give it a good try. You owe it to yourself, to the past self who worked so hard to get here, to give it a good try. I know it's tempting to want to hang your shoes up in this difficult middle stage where you're like, I don't know if I can ever do it. Will I be able to bridge this gap? Whatever. But listen to the next episode. At least give us the next episode of time before you decide to hang those shoes up, because you'll get over the hump and it'll be super fun and it's great. So if you are in that phase of like that plateau and you're just like, I'm doing relevates forever and they're getting kind of boring, I don't know what the point of this is, like remember what the point of it is. Remember why you did it. Go search for the why. And if your why's changed and point's not for you, fine, great. Feel free to, like, not just because you started something doesn't mean you have to do it for the rest of your life. But if you have it in your heart, in your soul, if you're one of those dreamers we talked about in the last episode, if you really want to do it, then keep going, keep searching, don't stop experimenting. And you're not alone. A lot of people, most people in pointe go through this little sort of puberty phase in the middle where
Point puberty.
yeah, point puberty, if we could call it. But yeah, you don't stop there. Don't let that be the end of your journey. Keep trying and keep going.
Yeah, totally agree. So how can people connect with you, and specifically like with the point aspect of what you do, if there are people who are looking either to get on point or they're on point but they're wanting like more structure for their training, how can people find you?
Yeah, come find me at Broche Ballet on all the socials. Brocheballet.com is my website. You can check out all my point programs there. I have a leveled point system, levels A through D. A is the very beginning. If you did not get any of those fundamentals about what your toes are doing, then I recommend starting with level A. It's just a 16 class series that takes you through all the details of what getting up and down even looks like. Level B takes you through solidifying your basics and then playing off the bar, call it venturing off the bar. And then levels C and D take you to the next level. It's one hand on the bar. It's getting off the bar and center. I teach you how to do pirouettes in your pointe shoes. We do step over turns, we do variations, we do all of these things. And so it really takes you step by step through the pointe journey. So if you're looking to practice at home and to have a guide through that, I'd love to be a part of that with you. And helping adults go on pointe and do pointe is one of my biggest passions, because it was such a important thing in my own life and journey going up. And I always want to be able to reach back and extend a hand. So find me, reach out, even if you just have a question. I would love to hear from you and would love to be a part of your journey to pointe.
Yeah, and I'm currently working through one of Julie's point programs, and it's been so fun and just, yeah, it's really given me the structure that I feel like I needed. So, yeah, for anyone listening, if you're in the same boat where you're just like, I want to progress, but I feel like I'm not getting structure. I know a lot of studios don't quite have enough adult dancers on point to offer like a full point class. And so I think that doing your program from home is just like such a great way to get that structure in place so that you can really progress. So I absolutely love it. And thank you so much for being here today. This was a really fun episode.
Yeah, Hannah, it was so great to chat with you too. Thanks so much for having me, and I can't wait for the next episode.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to share it with a friend or leave a quick review. It really helps more adult dancers find the podcast. All the links and resources we mentioned today are waiting for you in the show notes. And if you want more adult ballet content in between episodes, come hang out with me on Instagram @thebusybunhead. See you next week after class.